Hey, history buffs! We all know the name, Richard the Lionheart, the ultimate medieval action hero, the king in shining armor who left his kingdom to fight epic battles against Saladin in the desert heat. But let me tell you, the real Richard, he was less storybook hero and more royal rock star. He was a man who spent almost no time in the country he ruled, bankrupted his people to fund his travels, and actively fought his own father. Forget the legends for a second, because today we're diving into the raw, complicated life of one of history's greatest and maybe most misunderstood warrior kings. Get ready, because this is the unfiltered story of Richard the Lionheart. To understand Richard, you have to look at his parents. I'm talking about Henry II and the legendary Eleanor of Aquitaine. Imagine the most powerful, dramatic, and messy celebrity couple of the 12th century. That was them. Richard, born in 1157, wasn't the eldest. He was the third son. Not destined for the English throne, he was instead handed the Duchy of Aquitaine, a vast, complex, and culturally rich region in France. And this is where Richard got his first taste of war. Aged just 15, he was quashing rebellions. He wasn't some gentle prince. He was brutal, effective, and he loved every minute of the fight. He was his mother's favorite, and he quickly learned the art of war, politics, and, let's be honest, rebellion. The Plantagenet family dynamics were toxic. Richard and his brothers constantly fought amongst themselves and often together against their tyrannical father, Henry II. They wanted more power, and Henry was loath to give it up. This wasn't some little squabble. These were full-scale civil wars. When his elder brothers died, Richard unexpectedly became the heir. He eventually allied with his father's greatest rival, King Philip II of France, to basically corner Henry II. The old king, betrayed and broken, died shortly after. And just like that, in 1189, Richard was King of England, Duke of Normandy, Count of Anjou, and Duke of Aquitaine. He inherited an empire that stretched from Scotland to the Pyrenees. But what did he care about? Not paperwork, not sitting on a fancy throne. He had one singular, all-consuming goal: the Crusade. Jerusalem had fallen to the great Muslim leader Saladin in 1187. This was the ultimate call to action for every Christian king, and for Richard, it was his destiny. He basically sold everything that wasn't nailed down to fund his campaign: titles, lands, offices. When asked about it, he reportedly said, "I would have sold London itself if I could find a buyer." Talk about dedication. He sets off in 1190 for the Third Crusade. But this wasn't a direct flight. On the way, he stops in Sicily, and then, crucially, he conquers the island of Cyprus. Why? Because the local ruler mistreated his sister and his fiancée. Richard was not one to be slighted. He takes the island, gets married there to Berengaria of Navarre, and turns Cyprus into a vital supply base. Talk about a detour. He finally arrives at the massive siege of Acre in 1191. The French, led by his old ally, now rival Philip II, were already there, but Richard's arrival was the game changer. He was an expert military engineer and a ferocious motivator. When Acre finally falls, Richard, in a move that historians still debate, orders the execution of thousands of Muslim prisoners. This was a dark moment, but it also sent a terrifying message. The Lionheart was here, and he meant business. But his most famous moment comes at the Battle of Arsuf a few months later. Richard, leading his knights, absolutely crushes Saladin's army. It was a masterclass in controlled, disciplined cavalry warfare. This victory was so decisive, so brilliant, that it cemented his legend as the greatest warrior of his age. This is where he truly earned the moniker Lionheart. Richard led his army twice to within sight of Jerusalem, the ultimate prize. Twice, he turned back. This is the moment that defines him not just as a great fighter, but as a surprisingly pragmatic leader. He knew that while he could take the city, his diminished forces could never hold it against Saladin's vast resources. It would be a slaughter. Richard and Saladin, the two titans of the age, never actually met face-to-face to duel, but they developed this incredible, almost theatrical respect. They exchanged gifts and pleasantries even as they tried to kill each other's armies. It's an iconic piece of history, the ultimate chivalric rivalry. Ultimately, Richard fails to recapture Jerusalem, but he secures a crucial treaty with Saladin, the Treaty of Jaffa in 1192. It guaranteed Christian control over the coastal cities and, most importantly, allowed unarmed Christian pilgrims free access to Jerusalem. It wasn't the dream, but it was a solid, life-saving victory. So, Richard packs up and heads home. Mission accomplished. Mostly. But his enemies were waiting. He attempted to travel disguised, a bizarre choice for a king, but he was captured in Austria by Duke Leopold V. Remember Leopold? Richard had insulted him during the Crusade by throwing his banner down off the walls of Acre. You do not mess with the Holy Roman Empire's nobility. Richard was handed over to the Holy Roman Emperor Henry VI and held for an absolutely colossal ransom, 150,000 marks of silver. That's about 3 times the annual income of the English crown. While he was locked up, his younger brother John, who you might remember from the Robin Hood legends, was busy plotting with King Philip II of France to carve up Richard's kingdom. But Richard's mother, the incredible Eleanor of Aquitaine, went into overdrive. She crisscrossed Europe, raising the ransom money from every corner of the realm. The people of England, who adored their absent warrior king, paid the price. Finally, in 1194, Richard was free. He returns to England for a triumphant, glorious recoronation, just to make a point. But he only stayed for a few weeks. He had bigger fish to fry. The rest of Richard's life was spent doing what he did best, fighting King Philip II in France to defend his continental empire. He wasn't governing England. He was fighting for England's territories. He built one of the greatest castles of the age, Chateau Gaillard in Normandy, boasting that it was a daughter of 1-year-old whose fortifications were so strong they could not be taken. And then in 1199, the ultimate anticlimax. Richard was besieging a small, insignificant castle, Chalus-Chabrol, to punish a rebellious vassal. He was shot by a crossbow bolt, a wound that gangrened. The Lionheart, the greatest warrior of his time, died from an infection caused by a low-stakes siege. Richard the Lionheart. He was a terrible administrator. He didn't even speak English, and he spent less than a year in his own kingdom, but he was a military genius, an icon of chivalry, and a fierce, loyal son to his mother. He was the kind of king that legends are built on, a human hurricane whose life was a series of epic battles, grand drama, and unforgettable moments. He drained England's treasury, but he filled its soul with an enduring myth of courage and honor. What do you think? Was he a noble hero or a selfish warrior? Let me know in the comments. And if you want more stories about history's greatest rebels, hit that like and subscribe button. See you in the next video.